We are back, the Eric and Tony Show, episode 44, with our very special guest, Bozzi. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
It is my pleasure. Wow, this is really exciting.
We did it.
And we're switching up the game with the little rosé today.
These guys know my jam.
Yeah. Drinking rosé on the show.
Cheers,
in
Bruce.
Eric and Tony mug.
You guys hear me order that rosé.
Yeah.
And
it's a standing order. Anytime I see you set foot on the premises, we have to get you a glass of rosé.
I mean, for a little context, we should say I do a podcast.
Yeah.
And we and
Table for Two
with Bruce Bozzi. It's iHeart with Airmail Weekly, and it's at an establishment that these gentlemen work at, and they know. I usually tape it around noon, 12:30. It's lunch, with kind of very notable people you guys have seen.
And at 12:30, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So
it's somewhere, and so I was pregame
more
with
than
a
entitled to a
rosé,
glass of wine. Yeah,
do 2 or 3. But recently, I tried to sort of clean up my act, but.
I have noticed that. It's like no wine. It's mujen now. Mujen's
right. Mujen is like the thing.
Mujen
is a Japanese alcohol that my partner Sandra and I we launched, and these guys also know. And if you've never tried Japanese shochu, which is ours is a rice base, 3 ingredients: rice, water, and koji. It's the cleanest alcohol out there. Like no additives. #1 selling spirit, not wine, not sake, in Japan. Goes with everything. And we're about 2.5 years in, and we're kind of just hitting accounts, and it's good. So if you want to I don't know how much more tequila or vodka I could drink in my life. So I was like, so we went to shochu. It's not soju, it's not the Korean soju, it's shochu. Yeah.
Okay. So what's your favorite like mix with that? Like what cocktail is your
I tend to like a spicy. Okay. So I'll go spicy margarita. A shochu margarita is amazing, but I'll do a spicy, as clean as it can be. Yeah. I really stopped drinking vodka years ago. I was doing vodka sodas and stuff like that. But, you want it to taste like something that you enjoy tasting. Yeah. And I do like my rosé, as you guys know.
Yeah.
And a glass of red, simple guy.
Me too.
So like a little bit of like backstory, just so our audience knows like where you came from, who you are, like where you plan on going in the future. So you were originally born in Manhattan or New York.
Yeah, New York.
And worked in restaurants.
My whole life.
Your whole life.
Generational.
So you're one of us.
Yeah, one of you guys.
You're one of the guys.
We connect viscerally.
Yeah.
I was born in, I'm 3rd generation New York, born in Queens, lived in Jackson Heights, moved into Manhattan in the mid 70s. My great grandfather co-founded a restaurant called the Palm Restaurant, which we no longer, the two families own. In 2020, it was sold. It was a big family dispute on the other side, the Gansey side of the business, where the cousins who owned a minority shareholder piece. Very complicated because in the day, my great-grandfather started it in 1926 as an Italian restaurant on 2nd Avenue in the 40s, Midtown, and it evolved into a steakhouse because that's just what customers wanted. Yeah. It was
La Parma, right? It was supposed to be called that.
It was supposed to be called Parma, based on the village that they were from in northern Italy. Yeah. And at the business bureau, when they were sort of saying what they wanted it to be called, the guy, they heard Palm, and the guys who were immigrants didn't speak great English, were just too afraid to say no. Yeah. But so from that point on, it was Palm. Yeah. And, it's a great story. My father, who was the 3rd generation, and his partner, Wally, took it over. They really were the first kind of white tablecloth restaurant in the U.S. to start to expand across America. So the second one was D.C. Okay. The third one went back up to New York, across the street, because it was so busy. It was such a hot joint in the 70s. It was really like New York 70s, that scene. Then they came out here to L.A. in West Hollywood in 1975, and so on and so on. And over the years, the business is hard. And then but I worked, so I started working in summer jobs, doing everything, back of the house, seating people, never a good waiter. So they kind of kept me off the floor.
What? Really?
Yeah. A lot of charm. I had a lot of charm. And then just went into it full time. And 30 years later, had a great career there, ended. And now, at the same time, I was sort of working with my partner, Sandro, to launch Mujen, this alcohol, which flipped me on the other side of our business that we share from being in the restaurant side to this, hey, will you buy my product?
Right.
Side?
We know that, we're all familiar with the distributors.
Not easy.
Yeah.
This guy's
I always feel so bad for those guys when they come in and I'm just like, nobody wants it. They're busy again. I'm
always bad timing.
I
used to hate them when they came in.
Yeah.
That's me.
That's me now.
So, and you guys carried, and then I started a podcast.
How did you get into
Andy
the whole
Cohen's
podcast?
My best friend. So Andy Cohen, Bravo Andy, blah blah blah. So he started SiriusXM started a channel for him, Radio Andy, and he needed to put content. And one day we were at the Palm and we did a show of his called Deep and Shallow. He was like, it was just he and I talking, and literally about everything. Like we were talking about food, we were talking about sex. Goldie Hawn was there that day. We saw like this really beautiful African-American guy there. And we were like, oh, what is your hue of color that you really prefer? Completely inappropriate conversation on his radio. Cut to, he goes, I think this is a show and it should be Lunch with Bruce at the Palm Restaurant. And so for 6 years, I would call people that I knew, like, a lot of the customers, like Brian Grazer or Sherry Lansing or Matt Bomer, like that whole group of like people.
Yeah.
And I would do it. And it was clanky and noisy. And then I realized the Palm went away. I continued doing Quarantine with Bruce, now via Zoom. Yeah. So I kept the sort of momentum alive. Yeah. Andy sort of said, Sirius is going to launch a podcast. So just stay in the game. Because I was like, Andy, what am I doing here? Yeah. This is like 6 years. It's a lot of work. And we launched on Sirius. You guys know Jen Aniston. I literally texted her and said, not to drop names and be douchey. Yeah. These guys know I'm not a douchey guy. No. I said, Jen, like, would you do this? And you have to wait to ask. She said yes. So we did that. And we launched with Jen and Barry Diller and Amy Pascal and Kathy Hilton and Andy and Glenn Powell. It was good. Yeah. iHeart approached me and said, no one's really doing. Graydon Carter actually said, no one's doing it. Sit with people, have a lunch. It's all about generosity and curiosity. And we eat. So we talk about the food and just like this. What's the beauty of this conversation that we're having is we can look at each other's eyes. Yeah. And you just don't know where it's going to go. Yeah. And so Table for Two with Bruce Bozzi. And that's like my 2 jobs. Plus I have a 16-year-old kid. And I'm doing that.
I've been on your podcast many times.
Oh my God. Everyone's on my podcast every week, and we talk about his mullet. Everyone has everyone from Chelsea Handler. I mean, Chelsea was like obsessed with your helmet. I think she took with your helmet, with your mullet.
Your hair helmet, yeah.
Matt Bomer, he had the best line, which I never heard. Yeah. Business in the front, but a party in the back.
Yeah.
His Southern charm. Who was on last week? But she talked about it.
Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig. Yeah, I get, I get low rent people.
She's gonna do something. That name. Watch out for that name. Kristen Wiig.
Yeah.
So you're saying, you're best friends with Andy for a long time, and that's pretty rare to have a best friend for, from doing a little research, 30 years, best friend. That's unheard of for a lot of people. Yeah. And that's how Tony and I's, we're best friends from Wisconsin.
We're not too far behind you. We're like 27 years in.
Really?
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we have that same kind of, you have that like brother from another mother kind of a thing that's really, special to have out here.
Keeps you grounded. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people can kind of go a little wayward when they like are removed from their friends and family and they meet other people and they can kind of go in different directions. But having like a lifelong friend like that, they kind of hold you to task for like, hey, Bruce, you're not really being yourself right now. You know what I mean? Or like you're getting caught up in some weird trends or some bad circles. Like I feel like Eric and I can't keep ourselves tethered on like the the right path.
Yeah, and you when you have that history and you know each other from the different like chapters of your life. Yeah. There's something so incredible about it. So like with Andy in particular. So I met Andy in 1994. I was dating his best friend. Mm-hmm. And those 3 years, and Andy was like, and Andy, of course, this is typical to gay people, I'm making a generalization, not you guys, but there's a lot of, he was in love with his best friend, but the best friend doesn't. So there was like, you get into the relationship and it's like, you're being like attacked.
Yeah.
But you don't realize. So Andy was like always, it was always a mess when Andy was around. The year one, I'd be like, oh no, here comes that blabbermouth. Yeah. Joe's going to say something and I'm going to get in trouble. So I learned to be like, no, that's not true. I didn't date that person, which was so stupid because it was before I was dating his friend.
Right.
And so like year one was explosive. I was like, ugh. Year two, the boyfriend and the best friend, so it's my boyfriend, his best friend, was like a pain in the ass. Yeah. But like, you don't know how to exit something. And year three, we basically went out to dinner one night in New York, went to Carmine's in New York, and we kind of circled each other to see if we could trust each other. And we made the alliance. It was like, like Survivor.
And then we became friends officially.
And then we both left. So like you're a little behind us. So that was not, so that happened, broke up. Then that year, like 1997 was just a wild year for us. And we were in Miami and we were out and we were partying. I'm 31, he's 27. And these young gay guys are behind us someplace. And they're like, oh my God, yeah, Bruce and Andy, Brandy. Wow. You would have thought they invented, we were like, what? How did we not think about this?
Yeah.
So this year marks our 30th. We have deemed it, just so you know, so this is another launch, Andy. When you hear this, we've deemed this the year of Brandy, and we met in Miami. There was merch. We have a sweatshirt that says Brandy, Bruce, Andy.
Should do Brandy.
Brandy.
Brandy. Right. So we're celebrating 30 years, and to watch, to your point, a friend, especially go on his trajectory.
Yeah.
Which was not where the conversation was when we were friends.
He was an executive. Did you guys know? Was any of this planned, or was your
absolutely none? He was kind of a busy guy producing morning shows on CBS. He was then working. Eventually, went to Bravo, but as an executive, and
he was behind the camera the whole time.
Always behind the camera, but he was doing something at a certain moment where he was starting to write a blog when blogs were in.
Okay,
and he started to. Watch What Happens Live started literally at midnight, like in a little corner of Embassy Row Productions, which Michael Davies was like, sort of like, I think there's something here. This is his EP. And it grew and grew. And he's marking this year, congratulations, Andy, his 15-year anniversary of Watch What Happens Live.
That's awesome.
And we've all seen what's happened to his life. Yeah. And that's another thing when you're best friends with someone, and like Andy would be on TV and his legs would be like open from here to here. And I'm like, Andy, like everyone doesn't have to see your crotch. Yeah. Like you need to close your legs.
That's why good friends come in.
Yeah.
You gotta be that guy to say, hey,
give him advice.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's such a cool thing to be able to have that with somebody that long, and the older I get, the more rare you find out that it is to have someone like that, anybody like that in your life, like even family, you kind of get disconnected from people, but like for he and I, we're like almost each other's memory. Like I'm like, what happened? Like,
you know what I mean?
What happened during that time?
Your witness. That's he's your witness, and to have a witness in life. Like I was thinking tonight, like. Your life becomes really small. The people, like the older you get, like it just becomes very small. There's very few people that you keep close. Yeah. So to hold on to the ones that are witness, and because I lost a lot of them, just that was my nature. Mm-hmm. High school ends, bam, I'm out. College. But if you manage to have that witness becomes so important.
Oh yeah,
as absolutely. You get, and I'm 110 years older than the two of you.
You look like you're 20 though. You look younger than us somehow. I don't know. You're a vampire.
I know. I have my tricks. This is it's Hollywood.
Right exactly.
It's Hollywood.
It's ice baths,
Right. I do love my ice baths at Remedy. I could go on and on. And I've consistent. I'm a very consistent person.
You're always working out, workout guy.
We're back in the gym again too. It's funny now. So. We're not bougie gym guys. We're base model LA Fitness on Hollywood. Right? Since it was converted from a theater years ago, right?
Yeah.
We first started going there like in our early 20s, and there was the older dudes with gray hair and stuff. Right. And then now cut to divorce and reshuffling. I'm like, shit, Eric, we're like the old guys now. Yeah,
at the gym.
Yeah, freaky.
It's so weird.
Trip,
time flies. What do they say? The days are long, and the years are fast.
Yes,
exactly.
The
years are short.
But that's what keeps you young, though, man. I feel very just agile. I have a kid I got to keep up with and stuff like that. So he's like 4.5, but like it just being at the gym, you're just like, we were working out next to these two kids that were about, our ages when we first started working out there. I'm like, holy shit, man, this is like, us 20 years ago. And
such a
like,
trip. Such a trip.
It's crazy. And it does go fast. And you do look at people all of a sudden. Well, I always think I'm the same age. Like I'll say to Brian, so Brian Lord's my husband, and we have a daughter and a stepdaughter, and we have a whole thing. And so we, in New York, we live across the street from the new school. So every like September, all the kids are going like, and I always say to Brian, I'm like, I could just walk in that building and they would think I'm a freshman, like a student. Like I could go in. And he's like, you have such a warped sense of how you look and who you are. Like you're so old, he says. I'm like, really? Because from my eyes, right, I look just like them.
It's the same. Same.
Dude, I get that a lot too.
I think that about like ability. I'm like, I could play any sport that I played back in the day and like be totally fine. And then I'm like, I don't know, like
what were you guys like in high school?
Eric played football. I skateboarded. And like I was friends with all the different groups, and then like I was friends with all his football friends and stuff like that. And we like knew each other from freshman year, and then like senior year, our friendship was kind of like solidified. So kind of like you and Andy, where there's a couple like 2-3 years of just kind of being acquaintances, and then like one of our like all the football team did this trip down to spring break for like Daytona Beach. Okay, and this is before 9/11, so planes were extremely expensive for like a kid in a high school budget. Yeah, but a Greyhound bus ticket was $100 round trip. Okay, so 12 of us kids took the Greyhound bus from Wisconsin to Florida. Yeah, it's a 40-hour death trip, and like we just drank like endless bottles, like 1.75.
And a lot of the bus stops going like on the Greyhound, they stop near prisons because people coming out of prison, they don't have a vehicle. So we would have a lot of people that are just getting out of prison on the bus with us for a portion of the journey down to Florida. So like every time we'd stop or every other time, be like someone coming on with like, like their clothes in a white bag, wearing their like old, prison garb.
Yeah, whatever they got arrested
$100
in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just like crazy stuff.
Wait. I find that super fascinating, a little sexy in a weird way, and like kind of fun coming from a whole different New York way. Yeah. That there's a freedom in that.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing too. And it's funny because like, again, I don't know if you find this with like your 16-year-old and like that kind of generation, but like kids nowadays have a zero like drive to get their license. Like that was a huge thing. Like I could not wait to turn 16 and get the freedom of the road and be able to go wherever I want. Where a lot of kids are like 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that like we'll work with that don't have a license or a car. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like that's like that's like number one thing you do once you become a bitch.
Yeah, like, I don't need a car.
Yeah, our 16-year-old is showing no true incentive.
Exactly.
Yeah, she's like, I did this stuff online to take the permit, but she hasn't. So like now I'm like,
is she out here or is she in New York?
She's out here. Okay. And it dawned on me that what I've done also, unfortunately, on her basically is I put like my New York upbringing on her. So I just kind of like, even with meaning, I realized she doesn't have any sort of street sense or street smarts because she didn't grow up in any sort of urbanness. So like she doesn't. And I go, okay, but I also like, you're going to be 17 in November. Like, I'm not driving you around the city anymore. Like it's a pain in the ass. Yeah. And she doesn't want to. So I go, well, you have to figure this out because this is her hometown. Yeah. Like, I don't think of LA as my hometown. This is a place that I live, blah. But I don't know what's wrong with these kids. I think a lot of, granted, Uber, great, but
freedom of driving, going to like, driving wherever
there was nothing more exciting than getting in your car. That was first couple of years, turning your tunes on.
Yeah, absolutely.
With your friends, everybody piles in your car. Cranking up the music,
Screech out.
Yeah. Even driving without a destination, just to drive around. I mean, that was like
going nowhere.
Yeah. Just beating the crap out of your parents' car for like the first year or so. You know?
What was your first car, Bruce?
My first car was not so exciting. So my dad, like again, I grew up in New York, so I was not in a rush, but I wanted it because I didn't have to have it when I was 16 or 17 because we had all mass trans and I was living in the city. At 18, my dad bought sort of as a summer car a champagne colored Volkswagen convertible cabriolet.
Okay.
So it's kind of girly, but it's fun. Like it was really, and nothing power about it. Like just getting the roof down, you needed like to work just to make a left. You were like, oh my God. But it was great. Like to this day, I wish I still had that car. So that was like the first car that I had that we,
it's a true summer car too as a convertible.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's when we really used our cars in the East Coast, because otherwise we'd go out to Long Island.
Yeah.
We'd be out there. So we'd be driving around. Otherwise we were in the city sort of hanging out. But we were just talking earlier, I want that car, like being LA, you really notice people's cars. And, I have my like little Mini Cooper that I got so frustrated with. I think the favorite car that I got out here, and I've had fancy cars and not fancy cars, but was the Dodge Charger.
Okay.
All black, muscle car, but it's really wide.
Yeah.
And we named him Monty Monero. He was like Monty. Ava was small enough to really appreciate, like, we're getting into Monty.
Yeah.
But I was always like pulling to the side. So I gave Monty up after 2 years. I regret that. Like to me, so soon I want to get rid of all the superfluous and like get a cool, but I'm going like, funnily enough, I'm connecting to cars from the 80s.
Okay.
Which is, I think, because I'm in a phase of life at my age that there's a lot of nostalgia.
Oh, absolutely.
So I feel like I'm not looking for that 60s or 50s, or even the 70s, which was an important decade for me.
Yeah.
But I had all my formative years. I went through high school and college in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So that was like a big decade for me, you know? So I'm like, I need to find that car that I thought was so hideous in the 80s.
Yeah.
I feel like when I see them, I'm like, wow.
Isn't that so?
Yeah, it's funny, man.
I was doing that too, man. I'm like looking at my car from high school and getting super nostalgic over it. And I was like, oh my God, like, I would totally buy that car if they had it. And it's just a shitty car. Right. But like if I could find one, and California's a place to find it where nothing rusts.
Yeah.
You can you'll be driving on the freeway and you'll see like a 1984 Toyota Corolla that's like mint. Looks like it's like it rolled off the showroom floor, and you're like, oh my God.
I
like,
want that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know? And I'm like, if I could find my high school car, I would totally get it.
What was your high school car?
It was a Chevy Beretta, 1994 or 95, like Z26. So it had a 5-speed manual transmission. W26, right? It was like a boutique off of that. But it was like just like everybody had them out by us, but they're all rusted. Color? It was black. All my cars have been black. Black car.
It was a clean car. It was a 5-speed, right?
Yeah, it was fast for its time. You know, it was like a fun car, but it was just like, I look them up now, and I can't find one to save my soul. And if I did, it's like they're like $30,000 or something. And I'm like, it's crazy
for a car that was $3,000 off the.
Like I bought my car for like $4,000. Like I paid cash and worked the summer job. Paid it, and I'm like, dude, you can't find that stuff.
I fell in love at the time. I wouldn't have looked twice. It was a Jeep Wagoneer, wood panels.
Oh, yeah.
1989, 1990, like navy blue, the seats the front seat, you could fit 3 people in.
Yeah. We had a family vehicle. Like that was the exact same one. It was the dark forest green with the wood
family truckster.
Gorgeous.
My dad got a DUI with me and my brother in the car in that car. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. But I always loved that car. It's the one from the movie Great Outdoors with John Candy.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
Do you know how expensive those cars now are? Mint. They are like,
oh, I'm sure like on Barrett Jackson, they're like $100,000.
$100,000.
Yeah.
I was like looking, like thinking, like, oh, like look at that. And then I really saw it. I was like, oh my God. And at the time, if you were on the lot, you were rolling off that lot, and it was, what do you think?
$10,000 or something,
maybe. At most.
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah. Back in the day when those came out, dude, they were like, give them away. Like you couldn't give them away.
What happened to the green one? Your green one.
My dad would just get cars and sell them, like just with the season and stuff like that. There's so many cars I love when I was a kid. I'm like, Dad, can I have this when I get 16? He's like, sure. And then like next week he'd get rid of them. I'm like, what the fuck? But it's funny. So like with you're talking about your daughter and Monty, right? Yeah. I took my son out yesterday. We went to Ralph's. It's like a couple blocks from my house. And my car has like lap belts in the back. Right. I put my son in the back. We drive to Ralph's, and I always get attention in that car. People always like wave or say,
you gotta let everybody know what car you're talking about.
1967 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme 2-door. It's blue, like 2-tone blue vinyl interior and stuff. But this like foreign guy pulls up, like, oh, amazing car. What year is that? And I'm like, 67. Like, oh, beautiful car. My son's like so happy. He's like, it is a beautiful car. I was like, yeah, you finally got it. Yeah, because he loves that car. And if you ask him what his favorite car is, he's like, Dad, it's blue car. It's just like his
You can never get rid of that car.
Never get rid of that thing.
When did you get that car?
Got it in like when I was 28. So about, 2 weeks ago. No,
yeah.
Like 13 years ago.
$80,000 later.
Yeah. 13 years ago, I got that thing, and I got it for again like.
What did it cost?
Still got it pretty cheap. I only paid like $7,500 for that back then.
Yeah.
But now,
just like amount of money put into that thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I probably
you could have bought a house.
Yeah. I just put good money after bad money, only because at the time it was my daily driver. I was single. I just started doing stand up. I was driving. I mean, I bought it, had like 54,000 miles on it. It has about 95,000 on it now. But it was my daily driver for years. And then anytime I would like, blow the brakes out or do something, I would just replace with some kind of beefier, more sports thing. And then a whole bunch of other harebrained ideas. Like I converted to being fuel injected a couple years ago.
Okay.
So
fuel injected. What does that mean?
Yeah. So you're typical, like it's a carbureted car, right? So it's real, tough to start. It's not that reliable. And this is my third Oldsmobile that I've had. So my first one in high school was in 84.
Okay.
Then I bought a 75 when I moved out here at 19. And then I got this 67 a few years after that. But this has been the most temperamental one as far as engines go.
Yeah, that's my fear with the older ones.
Well, if you don't worry, Eric and I will start sending you classified lists with ones that have good engines and stuff. Because I will gladly go car shopping.
Great, I would love
with you for sure.
I would love it
because I just like seeing like cool old cars on the road. And then I was talking to Eric about this because recently I just started driving it again. And I hate to admit how much that car is part of my identity. The same way I feel very comfortable in my street clothes, not my work clothes.
It is a part.
Driving my Oldsmobile versus my Dadmobile, I just feel like me. You know what I mean? Like when I drive my little Honda, like I'm not like, it's just like I get at the car and I'm like, I walk up to it. When I leave my Cutlass and I walk into the grocery store, I look back and do a double check like it's a hot girlfriend. I'm like, that fucking thing's awesome. And I caught my kid doing it the other day. We're walking away. He looks like, that car's so beautiful. And I was like, yes, man. So
I will say, like, whatever kind of car you do decide on, like Tony, when he got his Cutlass, we lived together for 12 years in an apartment. Yeah. So
here in Hollywood.
In Hollywood. I live in the same apartment still. And before then we lived in a 1-bedroom and I lived in the kitchen for 3 years. So
your bed was in the kitchen?
My bed was in the kitchen. Because I was like, we gotta cut costs. It's crazy expensive out here. So we were working in Calabasas in an office. I worked as a graphic designer. He was a sales guy. And we drive out there every morning for an hour, hour drive to get to work, hour drive to get home. And I lived in the kitchen for 3 years. And I would be like, because I was in a band in San Diego. So I would drive down for my band. Okay. And I'd be like, I'm never home. So just take the bedroom and I'll just make a bedroom in the kitchen.
Like a cot? Or
we had a full ass queen bed in the dining room.
And we were like collecting big screen TVs for some reason. Like, because when you're like,
this before flat screens were cheap and you get those big projection TVs for dirt cheap. So like, we'd find a good deal, but then we wouldn't unload the other one. So we just had like, so when we'd have dates, we'd do like double dates, and these girls would come over and like, it was not a very furnished place, but there was just a bunch of
like
TVs.
A total like what two guys in their like early 20s thought was cool, right? Which was not cool. Yeah. So it was just like,
I've never heard of this.
Big screen TVs everywhere, and like a guy having like a kitchen bedroom, and like we'd bring people over and be like, hey, what's up? Like thinking we're like cool and stuff. We're like, we look like crazy people for sure. Like,
were the TVs actually hung?
No, they were floor mounted.
You were hoarders of TVs.
This is like those giant, like thick, like 4 foot thick TVs.
They were deep. They were deep.
Like deep TVs.
That wasn't tube TV. It was a projection. You remember those? Like the big,
before like
you could
of those. Like hang TVs on walls, to look.
And you still live in this place, so now you're in the bedroom.
So now
we moved next door.
We moved next door to that place on the same street, and then I still live there now. So basically to bring it back to the point was when he bought his 67 Cutlass, he's like, Eric, I'll tell you one thing. He goes, waking up every day, having the car of your dreams. And that was his car of his dreams, like a 67 Cutlass. He got it, $6 $6,000, like it wasn't like $1 million or nothing. But he's like, dude, every day I go to work. If I have to do something, he's like, I am so pumped because I get to go to my favorite car. Like I get to see it. I get to drive it. And he's like, if you do anything, like whatever you do, just try to like get a car that you love.
Right.
Because, and whether it's like your nostalgic car or whatever, like just get something that you really love and you're excited to drive. It'll change the whole experience of just driving or doing something
just your
mundane.
Basic errands and tasks are just like that.
Yeah,
much more
like I have to go to the Ralphs. I have to go to the grocery store and pick up some stuff. And you're like pumped up. You're like, yeah, I get to see my car. It's like a scene like your best friend or something.
Anything that reflects who you are, like whether it's a piece of clothing that you put on, you know, a piece of just whatever it is when you get in it, you just you change, you know, you become who you are. Like you feel that mojo.
And it has no like bearing either of what other people think of it. It's how it makes you feel. You know, it's like, oh man, I just love that. It just feels so cool. Like, you know, and like my girlfriend makes fun of my truck all the time. Like, oh, this is so stupid, whatever. But I'm like, I love it. I think it's so cool. It's like the coolest thing ever, you know, and it's that is the takeaway from it. Like something that you love and that you get excited about, which is like the older you get, those things are harder to come by, you know? So it's like, all right.
It's funny though, because just to like, not to belabor the car conversation, but it's something that's been circling my head recently to say, okay. Cause you know, I got a fancy car for the kid and the whole thing, and I leased that, and I get in that car and it's a Porsche Cayenne, and that's just not me. I always I always sort of kind of silently judge that car and those, and I was like, but I get into that little Mini Cooper, which isn't exactly me, but I feel much more like, okay, like I'm just zipping around. Yeah. But the car, she's out there somewhere.
Yeah. She's out there, man. You gotta find her. We're
gonna find.
Dial it in. Let's stick in the 80s decade, and then for anywhere from a cabriolet to maybe an IROC Camaro. We don't know. We'll see. Black T-top.
Camaro.
We'll see. Those are cool, man.
I'm a guinea. Yeah, I am an Italian in New York. Yeah, I really am. That's just my nature. It's in the blood.
What about you? Ever like those? Are you familiar with the hell's the Grand National? The Buick Grand National. Do you remember those?
The Buick.
Actually, I could see you driving a Grand National.
Those
really? That's like a
black.
sick
They
ass,
only
like,
made them in black. They're very like exclusive. They came with like a 3.8 liter turbocharged engine. It was like a Corvette Crusher, 2-door.
It's a two-door
Buick Grand National.
Yeah, it looks like kind of like. Do you remember the Monte Carlo from Training Day?
Sure.
It's like that, but the Buick version, and it's like one of the.
It's fucking sick. Like if you like black, they only made them in black.
Yeah. Only black.
They only made them in black. It was like somebody took over that, like a car that was supposed to be like a grandma and grandpa kind of car, and was like, if they had carte blanche on like how to like transform it into like the meanest thing ever, like at the time it was like faster than a Ferrari, Corvette. Really? It was like the car in the 80s.
Again,
and it's like
I'm sure it was like not
car.
The most expensive car. You're buying a Buick, no?
It was
a little more top tier back then, but nothing like crazy,
26 grand, I think, or something like that was like off the floor back in the day. Now they're rare, but they're like,
they're still not as expensive as like that Wagoneer. It's crazy because it's like this weird thing where there's only so many of them. There is another like top tier of that. There was a GNX version that's even more rare. Okay, but like the regular, Grand National is like a very clean, very like
it's
sought after car.
Like if people that like know the car will be like, they'll freak out about it.
Okay, but like you said, black muscle car from the 80s, that is like the
that's the guy.
That's the guy.
Okay, this conversation will continue with images and
I gotta get on links to.
I'm excited about this.
Barrett Jackson.
Yeah. So how do you guys like living in LA?
I actually love LA compared to now you're from another metropolis, so coming from like the sticks, like I moved out here a couple years before Eric, and then I moved back because I was living with my brother at the time, and he's like, he just couldn't hack it out here. So I had to go back begrudgingly. And the second I crossed the state lines, I'm like, I hate this. And it was like this is 05.
Like,
so
Eric,
it was the Katrina year. Winter was really harsh. I was doing construction, and I kind of, looped him in on moving back out here. And it's just like, I like the bustle of a city. It's nothing like, I wish I would have gone to New York before LA because I feel like I would have been a better fit there. Right. But I don't ever want to do cold weather again. Yeah. And now I'm grounded out here.
Especially because you have a kid. You can't, you're here.
Exactly.
This is,
Which I'm glad you say that because there's a lot of other dads that I'll meet that are like, oh, you had a kid? I love being a father. I'm like, oh yeah, what, you have shared custody. How often do you see your kid? Like, oh no, they live in Indiana. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, that's not, you're not really a dad. Like, you fathered a kid, but you're not like going through like the motions of like, pickups and school drop-offs and all that kind of shit. Yeah. Yeah, I'll never like be out of state for my kid. I love him too much.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And you think, at his age, he's young, but as they get older, it's like more important just to like be in this, just not leave. Like for instance, like, you know, Brian's away this week and I'm just like, you know, she's got her boyfriend first time. And it's a young relationship and it's all fine and all, but like you have to watch them. So it's, you know, there's a job. Yeah. You have a job. So it's like, right, you could be a father. Anyone could be a father, you know, but like, because you could just have a kid, but like to actually be in that kid's life and to do the work, and it's really hard.
Yeah. But it's also, you know, the most rewarding thing you'll ever do.
100%.
And then like you were saying, as far as trying to teach that like street savvy and stuff, there's just, I think it's like the biggest like mirror reflection of yourself where you're like, you know, these little kids are sponges. So they see how you react to scenarios and stuff. And it's interesting just kind of like realizing how like polite my kid is. Cause we'll say hi to strangers when we're walking the dog on the sidewalk.
Exactly.
And then someone doesn't say anything back. My son's like, Dad, she's rude. She didn't say hi back. I'm like, yeah, Anthony, some people are rude. You know, I like to just like take that second to just take a beat and like give them a life lesson. It's just like, and also give that person a little bit of my like, you know, anger towards them. Cause it's like, fucking, this kid's adorable. Say hi. Fucking asshole. Yeah.
No, 100%. And we share that very same thing. My thing when she was little was about kindness and being inclusive.
Yeah.
And like to this day, we drive by this house and he's recently no longer there, but they were doing construction. There was this guy always standing in the corner, like on the corner in the morning, and cold, hat on, hood, and there's a stop sign there, so I'd stop and I would wave to him. And at first he was somewhat confused, of like this man that's waving to him with this young girl in the car. But as time went on, you know, but this has happened many, many times. Now we're talking, this was recent. She would say, then, you know, he'd wave back and I'd wave. And then like there'd be, she was like, oh, your friend's not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, but it's like saying hello. And then when I say, and the same thing, when it's like not opening a door for somebody. I just, you know,
I think no matter where you live, like having those like core values and doing that, whether someone responds to you or not, like just you keep doing it. Like, why not do it? Like same thing. Like there's so many people that I walk by that are, you know, homeless or, you know, going through something, but I see them every day when I walk to work and I say hi to them. And some of them I talk, I have conversations. They know my name. I know their name. Hey, how's it going? You know, important. JC, you know, I'm going good. How's everything going today? And I'll talk for a half hour with them on the way home. And that's the same kind of thing that you kind of, we had growing up in the Midwest. You just always say hi and you're polite and you say, you know, you're good morning to people. We have a newer guy that just started working at our place of business that he was discussing his, you know, I guess interaction with people for the first time living out here. And he's like, yeah, it's so weird. Like I would walk down the street and I was like, hi, good morning. And he's like, people looked at me like I was crazy. Yeah. And then I was like, did I do something wrong? And I'm like, no. And it's just like, that's just, sometimes people just don't know that's like the thing to do. Like
they get freaked out.
Yeah. Like exactly. That's what he said. He's like, they looked at me like I was like crazy or something. I'm like, no, like some people aren't used to like just nice people. Yeah. And you just got to like keep doing that, you know, like it's
you just got to be you. I mean, I think like, you know, we live in a time, first of all, where, I mean, I have so many pet peeves. Like I have all my New York pet peeves. I have all like, you know, just how people walk, the pace that, you know, if you're not walking fast enough, I'm like, you got to get on like, you know.
Yeah. You have like pick up your pace and out here.
Like, like you got to pick it up, or how they, you know, drive. Like, what do you guys like? What are you doing here? Like, you got to figure this out because you're going to, but everyone looking down now with their phones. And I'm guilty of it, but not as, but I'm like, cause I'm so aware of how it looks and how it just appears like, wow, like no one is connecting.
Yeah.
And so the beauty again of what you're doing here and what like I try to do on my podcast as well is like, just let's connect as people because, and it's one of the things, especially when I come, you know, when I do a podcast where you guys work, it just fills me for the day because LA can be a very isolated environment. You know, you can be alone a lot. You're not just naturally in the mix of humans coming from a very urban place. But so that's why I like, you know, and Brian will always say like, you always like come back like, so, you know, because I have our interaction, then I have the interaction of the guest.
Yeah.
You know,
it's exhilarating. It's so much fun. Like this podcast, for myself, like when I leave my place of business, I typically don't go out. Like this is my going out. This is my like interaction, because I interact with so many people throughout the day.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of energy that goes into doing that. And so when I'm home, I'm like, all right, I'm home with my dog. I'm like, just chilling out. So this is like the very few times that I actually go out and interact, and then be able to have a conversation where it's like, okay, we're not on our phones. We're talking. We understand, we're having like we're good conversation. Like you're present, and that's such a rare thing nowadays. So being able to do that once a week, even at that, it scratches that itch where it's just like so nice to have that. I look forward to doing our podcast every week. It's like the most fun thing for me to do, just because you get to talk to somebody and have that connection and
delve too. That's the thing. Is like really kind of get to know yourself and other guests and stuff too, where it's just like, like I like to round out the character that a little bit of the framework from.
Right.
And really kind of get to know what makes Bruce tick and stuff.
Yeah.
So back to your question.
Yes.
I think you kind of touched on it. Like, how do you feel about LA?
LA is tough for me. I've had a lot of different iterations of Los Angeles, because growing up in New York in the 70s, the Los Angeles that was portrayed on television, I fell deeply in love with. It was like, wow. And it was, I'll make references that you might not get, but it was like TV shows like Three's Company or Charlie's Angels or Eight Is Enough. It was really glamorous to me. I was like, I got to get out there with sun, blah, blah, blah. So when it was time for me to make a decision, like when I was 13, I did like an iron-on. Remember iron-on?
Oh, dude.
I love LA,
It's funny because, we might be from a little bit, off generations, but like, I just feel like the 70s and 80s just kind of pushed LA on you. And like, I grew up inherently wanted to live in a place with palm trees, and skateboarding was legal out here, and there's surfing
and all that. Everything.
Yeah.
So that drove me to make the decision and I wasn't the best student. And at the time, USC was not the toughest school to get into. It had its 26,000
I never went to college, so don't
tech school,
So I went to SC. So I applied to go to California. I was like, I'm going to California. And it was far. And I had a great time. It was the continuation of who I just am, which was, I always went to my classes, always, did my work, but loved being in the sun, loved being just in that environment. Came back to New York in 1988, 1989. I got a job as an NBC page in New York, which was an amazing job. You give tours of NBC at 30 Rock. You work the TV shows at the time. It was Letterman was there, and SNL was marking its 15th anniversary. And, so you'd have these long, crazy days, but it was super fun. I stole my uniform. I still have my uniform, my name tag, And then 1990, I said, you know what? I got to go back out to LA. And my parents were just like, we don't understand why. And I was like, I don't understand why, but I knew I had to get out of New York. And it was really to sort of understand who I was. Yeah. Just come to terms with my sexuality, make a group of friends that, New York, I just had to get out. And I loved it. 90, 91, 92. LA was very exciting. It was, New York sort of kind of went on the darker side, and LA was just popping. It was, Madonna out here. It was Herb Ritz. It was like, just stuff was going on in LA. And then I woke up one day and I was around 26 or 27. I'm like, this city's asking nothing of me, and I could easily do nothing. So let me get back. And I was, I had a commercial agent, so I was doing commercials, and I was a PR.
We got to talk about this, buddy.
So Under Siege, baby.
Under Siege.
Then I did Under Siege.
Under Siege.
So, I was the worst actor, right? But again, I think you can only be a good actor if you know yourself and you actually do the work. Like, if you really want to be an actor.
Just sidebar. Do you think you'd be a better actor now than you were then, just because of the life experience that you could pull?
100%.
Right? Okay.
I think if I pursued an acting career at 58 years old, I could actually
10 years from now
do it. 10 years. Yeah. 15. 10. I could act because I know myself, because I'm comfortable in myself, and I just couldn't get there.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was super fun, because here I am, like, going on these auditions, getting these commercials. I booked like 10 commercials. It was crazy. Like, it was fun. Like, my first
And you're also going through the Thomas Guide to try to find these locations.
Thomas Guide.
There's no
Thomas
navigation.
Guide.
Smoking cigarettes. You smoke.
Well, that's what actors
Snickers
do, right?
and Coca-Cola. Like that way, and not thinking anything of it. Like I was like going into Gold's Gym on Cole with a cigarette in my mouth, talking to my best friend Steph, and then we'd like flip our cigarettes, work out, walk out, light up another cigarette. Let me tell you something. Those were good days.
Yeah.
Now like there's too much guilt. Like I don't want to smoke, but like And then so yes, bouncing.
So how did you get Under Siege? How
so
that's
Richard
like that?
Bauman.
I saw
There was a small. I
was like, no way, Bruce on Under Siege. That's like crazy.
That was one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Dude, that's like everybody's favorite movie.
They messed me up because this is what the deal is. So
Steven Seagal, man, you're on here.
This guy Howard Fuhrer, who was a very big casting agent, he cast all Woody Allen movies.
Yeah,
he's no longer with us. He called up this guy Richard Bauman. Richard Bauman's no longer with us. Wally Hiller, they had a very boutique agency. And they're like, can you meet with this guy, Bruce? And blah, blah, blah. Do me a favor. So I sit with Richard in his office, and I'm the 24-year-old Bruce, and Richard and I are we're just talking, and we're like talking, and we're really connecting. And he is, I mean, to me, super old at that time. And I think maybe 60, maybe 50. I don't even know. My blood might.
Right,
I mean, honestly.
But also back then, that age was a hell of a lot older.
Yeah, hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So he goes, we're going to sign you. And I was like, okay, like, great. So they would send me out. It was all like 90210, Melrose Place, a couple of movies. And again, except soaps, but I was always so nervous. Like, so I didn't understand it. So the Under Siege came through. And the reason I got it was because I was an F-18 pilot and I had a helmet and a mask. So you really just could see my eyes. So I got cast because I had these blue eyes. So he was like, and let me tell you something. I knew, so like, this is what's going to happen. Yeah. You fly around the ship. Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey.
Yeah, they're in it. It's crazy.
You clock you, and you know that you're clocked, and on beat 10, you know that the missile's coming, and on beat 13, you die. So all the acting
it's just in your
was
eyes.
in my eyes.
Yeah, which is tough though. That's tough. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm like, okay. And he's going like 1, 2. First I like turn my head and I'm like this. And he's like, hey, wait. You're in an F-18. You're going really fast. There's force.
Yeah,
you can't. You have to like move slower. And I'm like, okay. Who knew?
Yeah.
So then, I did it. I did the playback, and I nailed it. Like I saw my eyes at beat 10, panic, and 13, boom. So then I go to the movie. It's at the Grauman Chinese Theater. Like, I mean, hello, how many people get
you guys to go to the Chinese Theater for the premiere for that too?
It wasn't the premiere. It was like an afternoon. They weren't inviting me to the premiere. It was an afternoon performance, like during the day.
Bought your own ticket.
Smoked a cigarette, got some popcorn, went in.
Yeah, you're right. All right,
and then they kill me at beat 10. I look as relaxed, like I'm laying on a beach. I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. There's no panic in my eyes.
Yeah. Really?
Because they cut to, they're like, Tommy Lee, they're doing their thing. And I'm like, okay. And then boom, my one thing. And then, but honestly, I was going into rooms at the time, it was a very different time. And I was getting commercials. Like I got a couple Coca-Cola commercials. And it was like, okay, could you come in and take off your clothes and be in your bathing suit? We just basically, it was all about the physicality. And then I did a Merwin's commercial and I played this young husband and then I went back east and then I started working at the Palm and I was like, not knowing what I wanted to do. And I was dabbling in it. And I was like, this isn't, I did a play, Caligula in the East Village. When the East Village on Rivington and Delancey, like that area. I mean, it was 93. It was needles. It was not like you can't buy an apartment there now for under like $4 million. It was really bad. I was so bad in that too. The theater was freezing where you literally were saying your lines and like mist from your breath was coming because it was so cold in the winter. Like my parents came and the car like dropped them off and they're like, are you sure this is where you want to go? And they're like, yeah. But I moved on, but I say those early, like that second visit to Los Angeles to answer that part, because I've had these different chapters, was a very pivotal one because in those 4 years I met really big people in my life to this day that help shape me, form me, mentor me, support like things that I wanted to do. Very famous, like, very successful people like Barry Diller and Sandy Gallant, like those, like this, like that Hollywood thing. I was kind of playing around it a little bit. And I was savvy enough being a New York guy and also coming from a family that I kind of knew the rules of the game because I grew up in a city that taught me that.
Yeah.
And so and then I left in 93, 94 saying, adios, Los Angeles, no interest in ever returning. And then, you fall in love with who you fall in love with. And I came back in.
What if Under Siege 2 comes out, dude? I'm putting it out there right now. Yeah. You need to have Steven Seagal on your podcast.
Yeah.
You should put that out there. That would be insane.
That would be
That'd be
insane.
a bajillion views.
I still get residuals for like $2.16.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, I have some friends that are like, oh my God, I just got a residual. It was like $38,000. And I'm like, well, I got one for $2.
These eyes got
right. These baby blues.
Yeah.
Baby blues.
So that was my Under Siege. My big.
Yeah. Dude, that is so
it's
cool.
It's a book of life. Like, I feel like with all of us, like, you just want your book of life to be interesting. And I don't know, like, I've gotten to a place where it's not so much the results as much as it's the journey of.
Yeah, enjoy the ride, man.
I read a piece that was in the New York Times that you had mentioned that, and I wanted to bring that up where, you're like, what do I do? What is my purpose of life? And what is this all about? What is this? I think so many people have that question. I question that and ask that of myself all the time. Like probably too much, like on a daily basis of like, what the fuck is this? What, being in LA and being around a lot of the people that we're all around, you're like, okay, well, this is that is as great as it could be, right? Yeah. But then what is that? And what am I? Like what is the purpose of this? And it really is something that I, ponder a lot. And seeing that you had kind of had the same, questioning of like, what the hell is this all about? Like, what do I do? Like something that what fulfills me? What is my reason for being here? Like, what do I have passion about? Like, what is the real shit? And that's really important. And
well, no, I agree. I mean, the thing of it is, you're asking it at this point in your life. That was not a question that we asked ourselves when I was in my 20s. You just were sort of, at least I didn't.
I'm in my 40s.
Well, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, I wasn't asking it in my 20s either.
Right, but there are young people, and it's such an important thing. So like for me, when I sat down and did that interview, it's like a confluence of events happened, and I was like, a question that I was like, God darn it! Like I wish I had asked myself younger, but okay, that's a waste of time. This is what I'm asking myself. These things happen for a reason. And I say a lot, I say all the time, and it's crazy. And I think you get there when you get there. I say, God, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And it's not because of anything except that I know myself. Yeah. And it took me this long to know myself. It's not about anything, a material thing. I have a great family, but it's not about them. It's about, I know myself. Yeah. I know how I feel. And I have a voice. I know when I can say yes or no, or and it makes me it frees you. But it took me a long time to get there, I think. Yeah. But I got there.
I think that's so important. It's that's the whole point.
Like at the end of the day, at the end of the day, this is what it is. Like when I see you guys during the day over there, like that's what it's about. And like, I did a podcast amazingly with Norman Lear. He said, he invited me to be on his podcast. And I was like, what? Like how? And I was sitting there with a gentleman who was a chef, and he was talking to us with his like side, person on his podcast. And here's a guy revolutionary guy in television. Mm-hmm. And he's really focused in on me because I think he's just really trying to understand how I grew up in this sort of Italian New York hetero masculine restaurant world, but then went into it not being any of those sort of things. And like, how did that happen? And then he says something that I thought was so wild. He goes, so everything that I've done in my life, him, Norman Lear, has brought me to this moment to be here with you. And I thought, wow, like that's it. Like everything I've done and everything you've done has brought us to be here right now.
That's interesting.
Together.
Think about it that way.
And then it's over. It goes. And it's like the next thing.
Yeah.
But one thing that deviates doesn't land us in this room together on this Friday. And like, to me, that's like, it was so beautiful. I got very emotional when he said that.
Yeah.
I was like, like,
I got some goosebumps over here.
Like, holy moly. Like, so then I said, there's no mistakes in my life. Everything, yes, I could say, I wish I'd done that or kept that car, or I had made this money or saved that money. None of it matters. It's all about, I think we've all, I feel even during the dark times, whatever they were, and they're all relative, brings me to today, and that's good.
Yeah. I think like, the saying, the best things in life are free.
Right.
And that's like your friends, your family, the people you love, your experiences, like they don't really cost anything. They just cost you time. And that's the most important thing, like time spent with people and creating new experiences, whatever they are, and that's something that definitely, like, I've changed my perspective a lot. Not that I was ever like, I never had a goal of really doing anything so grandiose or like becoming a celebrity or kind of like fell to the constraints of like what the town kind of is, like what it embodies, like, everybody's trying to be successful and do something, I was always kind of like an observer here, and got into the outdoors out in California. That's something that really kept me grounded out here, and being around all the beauty and all of like the mountains and the lakes and stuff, and being able to explore the countryside really is something that really like kind of refocused me and centered me, where you go back to like, I was the happiest I ever was, you're reflecting on a time in your life where you didn't really maybe have everything that you wanted or did everything that you wanted to do, but like you were just happy with yourself, and I found that out alone, like in the woods. Like I was like, man, how am I the happiest I've ever been? There's no one around for like 1,000 miles. Like I'm by myself. I'm fishing alone. Like, I'm like, how is this better than like, me, working 9 to 5 or working 3 jobs at the time, trying to, pay rent, do all those things. And I'm like, wow, like the happiest, like I don't really need any of this other stuff. Like it's right there. It's just like,
but just a recalibration as far as what really is important, what you really need to have, like, a sense of self and stuff. And that's kind of what you're saying, as far as once you really kind of, figure out your true happiness, friends or family aside, really being like content in your own and comfortable in your own skin is a thing that I think a lot of people, especially in LA, don't have, where there's like, this is the city of lost souls. There's a lot of people that are trying to keep up with the Joneses or buying this or, and like you said, you kind of snicker at the Porsche Cayennes and stuff because a lot of people buy those because their neighbor has one. It's a status symbol. They have to try to keep up with those type of things. And a lot of those people, man, are just miserable. But just the simplicity of just being like, and I think it's good that you have that sense of self too, being a father, where like your kid knows that. They know that you're like, happy, and like, you're not supposed to judge other parents or other, your kids against other kids, but like just at drop off, where I'm like, today was an assembly at my kid's school, and there's just all like the housewives with their big coffee thermoses and stuff, and they're all caddying. Dude, they all click up. I never have been a part of those cliques of any of this parental stuff, and like, nor do I want to. But I had this like thought today. I was like, it's funny how I never really get into these conversations with the dads or the moms. I'm just more with my kid and the other kids and stuff. And I'm like, is that my big kid? I'm like, I'm just actually fine being by myself. I don't need that kind of like, reassurance, which is like, hey, we're all in this together. I'm like, no, I'm here for my kid and I'm doing the things for him, but I don't need to try to like, make sure we're all like, keeping up tabs on one another and like who's got what vacation plans for the summer and stuff. It just, comfortable with myself and my own decisions.
That time when you have a kid, that those groupings that happen, I wasn't really a part of it either. And I would be like, there were things, when group emails that would go out that were like to the ladies. And I'd have to remind them, like, because assuming everyone's a mom on the thing, I was like, hey, this isn't the case. But my big thing with Ava at that age, when we were drop off and you're there and you're hanging out, you know, was the inclusiveness. Like I could see like the kid that was sort of like the nerdy kid, and I could, you know, be talking to Ava, and then this other girl would come up and she'd be talking, and all of a sudden they would turn their back on her.
Yeah.
And I would grab literally Ava by her hand, and I'd say, you were just talking to this little girl.
Yeah.
You need to turn around and finish this conversation. Or like to another one of her friends who was quite aggressive. And I'd be like, hey, we were talking here. Or when these kids, and the parents were right there, they'd come up and they'd be like, oh, can we go and do this right now? And I'd say no. And then they would say to me, why? And the mother would be standing right next to me. I'm like, what did you ask me? And the kid would say, why? I go, you don't ask me why. I don't have to explain myself.
Right.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
you. It's because I said so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why.
Yeah.
Like, and the mother would be looking at me and I'm like, what is happening here with these children that are like, you know, becoming monsters? But, you know, like this is like you have your thumbprint. The more you're with him is the more they're a reflection of you. And now, you know, it's tricky now. You know, I will say it's having a 16-year-old, and I have a good one. It's still, it's like, it's a heartbreaking job. No matter at its best, it's a heartbreaking job. It just is.
Yeah.
There's just like, you know, and that's the thing too, because like now he's in like a TK in a LAUSD school and stuff, and there's like him and another kid were getting into fights out of the gate and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to worry about my kid being bullied and all that kind of stuff. And then like, you know, as the protective like Papa Bear, you want to just go in there and start smashing 4-year-olds and stuff. You can't do that. But just kind of like, oh, okay, we got to try to work this out over like a pizza play date and stuff, and try to like make sure these kids have alliances and stuff, and like. And then you're worried about like, you know, your kid being the mean one and all that kind of stuff. And like, my kid's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
But like this little
There's
kid.
so many variables that you guys have to like deal with that you don't really have control over, that are out of the, you know what I mean? It's like, what if the kid might be a little nuts, and then like the parents of that kid that's nuts is like even crazier. And then you're like, but my kid is friends with this kid. Like, how do you navigate all that? It must just be like,
it's
I would
interesting.
homeschool at that point, I think.
Yeah, you definitely think about it. You know, my mother always tells this story. It's such a different time. When I was little, I was in the playground once, and this kid bit me, and all the parents were around, and she bit the kid. And this was like, you know, we're talking.
I already
late
like your mom.
60s.
Yeah.
And she goes, now you know how it feels to be bit.
Yeah.
And she was like the mother freaked out. But I have like this Italian New York mother.
Yeah,
who's like, you know, I'll be, you know, but you gotta, and part of it's letting go. And because, you know, part of becoming who you are, for me at least too, because my parents were involved, but then I got my fair share of bullying, is understanding it develops a skill set in you on how to survive.
Exactly.
And that's an important thing to learn. And as a parent, it's hard to sort of say, you're going to have to figure this one out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
be safe, but
because, you know, again, this is kind of still a newer thing for me. So like, you know, initially, like I was like your mom, like I'll fucking bite that kid right now. But then there's like,
knock
you know,
that kid out.
Exactly. And then there's kind of like, you know, your little, you know, you start to get your head back in your body, and you're like, okay, you can't do that. But like, it's still, you're still tested on a daily basis. I took my son back to Wisconsin for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We were in some like mall back in Milwaukee, and they had an indoor playground, and some kid just fucking punches my kid in the face. And I'm like looking around, I'm like, okay, whose parent is that? And I go up to the kid, I'm like, where are your parents at? And he points to this group, and I go to the guy who I think's his dad. I'm like, hey man, your kid just punched my kid in the face. Like, when you're not like, cause their backs are facing the kids.
Right.
I'm like, fucking watch your kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't have a son. I'm like, well, whose kid is that? And he points to this other guy. And by this point, I'm starting to lose some of my rage.
Right.
So I like, and I wasn't going to do it. But I just like, I was so mad. I had to say something to get his kid out of the playground and stuff. And I'm like, hey man, watch your fucking kid. You guys are like, you don't just drop your kid off and let him wreak havoc in the playground.
Yeah.
If you already have like a kid that's got some problems, like keep an eye on him and stuff. Because like my kid doesn't deserve to be playing in a place that's like a hostile environment and stuff. And I call myself down, but I was just like, Jesus Christ, Tony. Like you're just like, I'm not trying to get in fights as an adult, but like when it comes to your kid.
You're justified by saying you got to turn your back. Like we were at this thing, you know, my stepdaughter has a kid, and this, and the baby, not even her older son who's your son's age.
Yeah.
This other kid just went up to her. She's like 1 and like 2 inches from her face. screamed bloody, just screamed.
Yeah.
And like we're all sitting there because it was like a recital. And I'm like, okay, so I have to sit on my hands like, because I am.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, okay, like, is this kid going to be by his ear dragged out of here by the teachers and his parents who were there?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And thank God my step grandkid, she's tough. Like she's 1.5. She'll take you out. She's looked at him like, are you fucking nuts?
Yeah.
But to this day, I'm like, I can't get over that this little person wasn't. So you just like lost the privilege.
Oh yeah, like that shit did not fly in my house. Like if
yeah, oh my
any
God,
of that shit.
No. We were
that
running
shit was you're
for
getting
safety
belt,
in my house. It was like that look in the eye, and everyone just ran.
Oh yeah,
you knew
for
you
sure.
were gonna get it.
You knew
no
you
words
were
need to
fucked.
be exchanged. You just
Right.
get the look.
Look.
Yeah, the look, and you were done.
The drawer was being pulled open where the wooden spoon was.
The
wooden
we were
spoon.
Scattered, you know.
Like I don't think that happens anymore. I don't think
No.
like there's no spanking. Not that I don't know necessarily. Like my brother has kids and he doesn't spank his kids, and he grew up in the same house I did, where there was definitely spanking, like all that shit. And I'm like, dude, do you spank your kids?
Spanking
He's like,
light work.
he's like, nah, like we don't like do that anymore, and like it's not like a thing you can do anymore.
Yeah.
Like he kind of explained to me, like, yeah, it's just not like you just can't do that shit anymore.
Right.
And I'm like, man, I mean, maybe you've been the last generation, Tony and I, where you can just get the
you
fucking
are the
shit
last
get
generation.
beat out of you.
That
Like,
got
like
spanked.
oh
But
man,
yeah, you
That's
really
what I
can't.
was
And I don't know if I feel that it's almost like a double negative. You know what I mean? Like spank, and then you want the. But it is still something that you're like,
right. I don't know what it is,
you can
but
get
it's
across a
there's-
similar thing without doing like the spanking. But like I think you need to do something, because just not acknowledging it at all is like is not the way to go about it. Because it's just like, well, how the fuck are they gonna learn a lesson? You just like, and that's one of those things where like, I've had this like there's a park in like Beverly Hills that I take my kid to and stuff, and like, it was freshly out of my divorce, and there's just and then I realized quick, because I ran into another divorcee there. This guy that goes to my same barbershop's like, oh yeah, all these women are single, and it's kind of like the vibe. But then once he told me that, I'm like, well, no wonder, because they're all just like, again, same thing too. They're letting their kids just wreak havoc and get in fights, and like, there's no one's paying attention to their kid just beating up other kids. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, this is why this country's going to shit. Because like, everyone's bubble wrapped. No one's getting bullied. No one's getting reprimanded. No one wants to drive. It's just like this, just like, free for all.
What's going to happen here?
Exactly.
I guess we just have to get through the election. Let's just
get
through
else it could be the last season of America. Yeah. And I don't want it to be. I want,
exactly.
You got to get
Speaking
through
of people that should have got punched in the face, I don't think Donald Trump ever got like properly bullied and kind of set in his like
I think it's
place.
I think you're right. Well, he must have gotten the shit kicked out of him at some point.
You would think, but I don't
he was
think.
such a fatso loser.
Yeah,
I
like
say fatso because that means
no, he was though. He still is.
He is a big fatso.
He still is.
But like, because he was always going to be an annoying person. So
he's just a fucking.
But yeah,
dork.
he was an entitled kid from Queens. But he's got that thing, that sort of weird ability to sort of have people follow, right?
Yeah.
So he's got that weird, some people have it and it's used in a positive way, and some people historically have it and it's used in a very horrible way. And so I think November 5th is going to be really telling, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I am.
Regardless, we'll survive this guy, but he's a loser. And if you're really paying attention, we all know it's like it's a stupid conversation at this point, because I'm like, they're both old, so let's get past the old conversation. Yeah. The stock market's doing well. Biden has repositioned the country. Yes, he's old and he's a little crickety because of his body, but it's all working.
But he believes in the Constitution.
He's doing it. So 4 more years ain't gonna, but like, it's not like this guy. So
to me, it's it's like black and white. It's like so obvious. It's like either you want a dictatorship or you don't. Like it's like either you're for the values that we have as a country or you're not.
Or you're not.
And that's as simple. It's like there's no even arguing it or talking to people or trying to say any thing to convince them. It's like if you don't see it, then I don't know what, like, if you don't see it by now, then
but you're talking to people, again, we're all kind of raised of a different generation and stuff like that, and kind of have different core values and like the wherewithal to look at what to look for with those people, where as like the younger crowd that might go more towards Trump aren't aware, they're not that savvy where they don't
I don't think there is that much of a younger crowd that is going towards Trump. I think that it is the older generation that is being manipulated by basically doesn't know how to use the internet. Like, we grew up on the internet. Like, it was invented like while we were in high school, and like the dial up and all that stuff. Right. So like we're kind of like more savvy to that, where like I have people that I know that will share stuff on Facebook and stuff like that is obvious spam. Like we need to respond to this Saudi Arabia prince, and we're entitled to $80 million now, Eric. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like so if they're falling for that, like Trump is basically that. Yes. There's a great documentary on Netflix about how it's a thing called 4chan, which was used by like kids of our generation that used it as like memes. Basically, they're like creators of memes, and they used Trump as like a joke, and they were like, oh, let's fucking make this guy like let's hype him up and like make a joke about it. And they basically like inadvertently like made him the president. Right. It shows like how they used him, but like we're able to like, while they were figuring out that they can manipulate people or manipulate an older generation, they're like, oh shit, like what the fuck did we just do? Right. Like we like lied enough to where like we actually changed the outcome of what can happen. Yeah. And like with that, amongst other things. So I think it's like a misunderstanding of how the internet really affects generations. Yep. And seeing that he's just kind of leaned into that and taken advantage of, and I'm quoting him saying, he loves the poorly educated. He does. He says it, and he calls them out, and he's like, and it's so crazy. He's like, I love fucking stupid people. And they're like, we're fucking dumb. Exactly. And it's like, how the fuck are you not seeing that?
My dumb ass loves you too. Yeah.
Like you're the fucking, you're the pawn. Like you're the joke.
He's done nothing for anybody.
No, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
No,
nothing. I found it so astounding that like that is where our country is at this point. And it baffles me. It blows my mind. And it is a stark reminder that, you know, just because we are Americans, we live in America and like, we're the best and all this stuff, that you can have a dictatorship and you can have things like a Germany Nazi happen. You can have that in a modern civilization. Yes. It's not something that is, it's not something that is off the table. No. It can happen to anybody. And I feel that it's happening right now, but it's like a slow sludge that's creeping into the country, where it's just kind of normalizing a lot of these rhetorics and things that are being said, and the people that are in the public eye right now, that it's normalizing the things that are changing our democracy and changing what we stand for as a country. And people are, because they're not educated about it or have no interest in it or work too many jobs because they can't afford to live in where they live, where they just don't live. Like they're not watching news every day or trying to consume all the shit. They're just like, I got to put food on the table. So I'll just throw on Fox News and they're going to tell me the truth because that's what I watch for football, because most of the football games are on Fox News. So why would they lie to me? Yeah. So it's like this ignorance that is just like, it's just sludging in, and he's leaning into all that shit. And I see it with a lot of people amongst my family back home, and I'm trying to stop it and prevent it as much as possible and have conversations with them and understand where they come from. Right. But it is the most struggling, hard thing that I've ever tried to do or wrap my brain around, more than anything ever. And it's so fucking like scary to me. Yeah. I've said on this podcast before, my grandparents are immigrants from Germany, and my grandfather lived to be 91 years old. Before he passed away, he said, Eric, this is before Trump was elected. He goes, I fucking heard all this same shit from Hitler, same rhetoric, all the same bullshit, the same propaganda, the same gaslighting. He goes, I'm not going to be around that long. Watch out for this shit. I'm not going to be here, but like, you could go through the same shit that I was going through. Right. And growing up, hearing all the crazy stories from him, I'd be like, no, that shit would never happen. Those are crazy stories that Grandpa would tell us. That would never happen. Yeah. And now I'm like, shit, am I going to live through what he lived through? And
well, you're living through it. We are living through it. Yeah. And you know, the playbook, and when you use Hitler as an example, who probably was one of the greatest marketers.
Yeah.
Ever. And it was a slow groove. So like this, by the time you get to like the mass extermination camps that were going on,
it was a sludge.
We're talking the 1930s. Now you have this guy come into power and people start to believe stuff, imaging, marketing, megaphones, and they start to divisive and divide. And he was able to do something that was really sort of so unique and so kind of, obviously the magnitude. And we're in the same thing. Now we're seeing women's rights are being taken away.
100%.
The conservative court, which is LGBTQ things. We're seeing like so many pebbles along the pathway of
it's
the
slowly
same thing.
Deteriorating the same thing.
Yeah. The MAGA, and again, people believing someone has their best interests at heart, but they're not educated enough. We do have a somewhat highly illiterate country.
Oh my God, yeah.
We have a lot of, and the economic disparity, which is crazy to think that if the middle class, it's the middle class in America today it's
so far from what it once was.
Like
it's
middle class today, you're making like a mid 6-figure salary. You're like making 150, 200. That's a middle class existence.
Like lower middle,
right? That's not livable. These wages are not livable. And then you have that 0.1% and the 1%. So I'm like sort of a posh socialist, I've been called, where I get very, very, verbal about how people are living, what you need, what you don't need. This is really unfair. And I've really noticed in LA, and I'm a person who really kind of, I've noticed the last like 3 or 4 days, how many people are walking the streets in this sort of catatonic zombie state with all their belongings, and it's horrible. And you're like, this is, all around us.
Yeah.
So that's also where now you can lean into the fascism, because when people are at such a low place and they think it's going to be better, it's the big flip.
If they have someone to point a finger at.
Right. And they think, oh, it's going to be better. So this guy, Hitler, he identified the Jews. He was, let's do this.
It was a slow burn with him. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like he's like, all right, I'm Hitler, and the next day let's put everybody in concentration camp. It was like, no, let's take away the right for them to own businesses. Let's take away the right for them to go to schools. Let's take away the right for them to eat at the same place. It's slowly.
Then let's go and take over their apartments.
And then people were like, okay.
Someone shoves a gun.
Yeah, it was a slow burn.
And the anti-Semitism that's happening, and what's happening in Israel. There's so much. And like to you guys that said, and I feel for you guys, because like 2001 was a huge moment. It changed everything forever. So I had, a lot of my life before 2001, like my young life, which was fantastic. The 90s were fantastic. The 80s, we had the Cold War, we had Reagan, we were like, oh, Reagan sucks, social issues, he didn't say the word AIDS his whole first term, but we had this pandemic going on, like, a pandemic that people really didn't even acknowledge because it was really attributed to a gay, but yet it was not. A pandemic, a virus doesn't give a shit who you're fucking.
Yeah,
it's a virus,
right?
And that just happened to be how it was spread. So like now we go through COVID, which again changes. So like your kid's young enough, I think, in a great way that my kid hit all that. So that's a bad thing. That's anxiety. Your kid's going to go to school. Phones won't be allowed in school. That's coming soon. Schools are going to be phones are horrible for kids.
Yeah.
Social, all that stuff. They're going to be tight controls on that because these kids are all messed up. Like I'm addicted.
I'm so thankful that it was like, could you imagine like being that young, like 4 or 5, having a cell phone and having Instagram and all that stuff, and like,
my God, no! Just getting a porno magazine was a huge ordeal. Like that was like an achievement. Now imagine like you're like 12, shut your bedroom door, you're just ready to go. It's not healthy.
No,
it is not, man.
We've really hit a couple of them.
We went full circle on this one.
Wow.
It's a good podcast.
Yeah.
I think, all right, this is the longest podcast we've done.
Oh my God.
Congratulations, Bruce.
It seems so quick. You know?
Yeah. When we have good ones,
we're hospitality people. We're in the service business. So, you know, I'm very grateful to have been invited to be on your podcast. Thank you
so much for coming
as we are.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
You guys are the best.
It's nice to having people on and just having good conversation.
Thank you.
It really is.
I'll come back anytime, and we got to do the same. We got to flip it now. You'll come to Table for Two.
Okay.
It'll be
Table
different.
for Three, a special edition.
Table for three. It has happened. It has happened.
It really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's been a couple of Table for Threes.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I guess this is the part of the podcast where we like to ask our guests like what they have coming out in the future, where they can find your podcast, where they can find you, if you want to divulge that, Instagrams, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yes. Well, I have Table for Two. So we had Miss Ellen Barkin drop last week, which I think is maybe one of the best dynamic conversations I've had with one of my guests, because we just get each other. We're kind of come from the same place. We're not the same generation, but we have this like New York sensibility. She's a tough broad, and I always find it interesting when someone tells their story and you make an assumption about them.
Yeah.
But it was like her commitment to studying acting and working, and she was a waitress for many, many years. Loved that job and like what that did for her. She did it for a number of years. So that I have coming up on my podcast. I just did Sam Taylor, forgetting her last name, Sam Taylor. She directed Back to Black, and the Amy Winehouse story.
Yeah. I went on her for that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah. Who's dropping next week? So Table for Two is on a good groove, and this is a good season. Divine Joy Randolph was on, and that was a lot of fun. And we have Christian Louboutin just said yes to it, so that's going to be. I'm trying to get a little bit more diverse. Mm-hmm. Mujen is my booze. And Mujen is, I can't stress enough, it's a delicious alcohol.
Next time we're drinking Mujen.
Yeah. And we'll make a couple cocktails. And it comes in 3 expressions. This is a 10-year age, but it's really, there's a low ABV, which is really like the thing. Really kind of focusing in on being a dad and being a 16-year-old. We're realizing, try to be present, be in the house, even if I don't see her, because just being in the house is important, you know? And summer's approaching, so I'm trying to think if I'm working on anything else. That's really what I got going on. And so and my Instagram is Bruce Bozzi. Bruce Bozzi on Instagram. It's my jam. Like I do love my Instagram. I say, and my buckets are physical exercise. I love to share exercise, but like not like in that like annoying, I think, way where I'm trying to like teach everyone to be. My podcast or the booze, a little bit of my family, but everyone doesn't, I can't put a picture of my daughter up.
Yeah.
Brian, my husband doesn't, so, but that's, I find that a joyful way to also connect with people and to just in a healthy way, not a comparison way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my gig. That's what I got.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Gentlemen, thank you.
You're welcome.
So great.
This is a pleasure.
Tony, where can people find you?
You can find me at Tony Klein Comedian on Instagram. I'll be at the Crow Comedy Club the 25th next Saturday and the 30th at the Everly Kimpton Rooftop Show, Summer Series Rooftop, if you want to come, Bruce.
I do.
Eric, where can people find you?
You can find me on this podcast, the Eric and Tony Show. So we post the full episode of this podcast, the video, every Monday on YouTube, and then the full audio on Spotify every Monday as well. And then we do 60-second clips throughout the week, every single day on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts. So Bruce, I'll be blowing up your Instagram as a collaborator. So what we do is I'll send you a 60-second clip every day of like a clip of, like a cliff note of one of these interactions we had, and up to you. There's no obligation to share, to do anything that you want but I'll just send them to you. So just don't be aware that those will be coming to you. We do that with everybody. And then if you want to buy a beer mug, you can go to the Eric and Tony show and buy a beer mug. Also a rosé mug.
This doubles up. These are the coolest things. Okay, you sell these.
Yeah, that's yours to keep. Take that.
It is?
Yeah, you can keep that one.
Oh, I'm keeping this.
You can go to the ericandtonyshow.com and purchase these t-shirts, hats, all that kind of stuff. If you want to watch the podcast or listen to it and have a beer or a mujen or a rosé and listen to the podcast or watch it with us. And then we'll be on again. We have a podcast tomorrow with we have Sunday, I'm sorry. Sunday with
Alex Cooper from America's Got Talent.
Yeah, America's Got Talent. So that'll be a lot of fun too. And that is where you can find me and the rest of these guys. And thank you again, Bruce, for coming on. It was so much fun. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Interesting.
My pleasure.
Always learn something on these things.
It's always a pleasure to be around both of you. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.